Hi, and welcome to Grocery COVID-19 Live. I'm John Springer at Winsight Grocery Business. I'm here this week with Kat Martin, our content director, Jen Straley, our senior editor, and the supermarket guru, Phil Lempert. Phil, let's kick it off.
So, John, what's interesting to me this morning is IFIC issued a new study, a second look at COVID-19's impact on food purchasing, eating behaviors, and perception of food safety. There's a lot of great stuff in here, and everybody in the industry should be referring to it. I don't think it's up yet on foodinsight.org, but check it out there. It talks about the fact that people, yes, have bought more packaged foods. We've talked a lot about that. They also found that the number one source, when asked how much would you trust information from the following on what foods to eat and to avoid, number one source was registered dietitian and nutritionist, just fueling the whole retail dietitian. That was that was higher than personal health care professional. But the most interesting thing is they have a whole section on grocery store safety actions. And I want to get your opinions of this. Here's the question. As a result of COVID-19, which of these actions would you like to know that grocery store employees are taking to ensure the safety of your food? And I'm going to go in reverse order um, because I know we're going to have a lot of to talk about with the number one response. So employees physical distancing while working, only 13% of people said that. 15% said installing barriers between cashiers and customers. 17% said, and Jen's going to love this one, employees wipe down food packages. 19% say limit the number of customers. 21% said employees wear gloves. 28% said frequently wiping down surfaces, and 36% said employees wear masks. So, Jen, you were on a call this morning with UFCW about these kind of topics. What did you find out?
Yeah, so they're going to roll out a couple of initiatives in the coming weeks. And one of them is this campaign that they've talked about before about shopping smart and really encouraging shoppers to wear masks because it's not mandatory at all stores. And then the second one is that they're going to sort of out the grocery store chains that they feel like are not properly protecting their workers. And the mask thing has become such a hot button topic. The call this morning also had grocery workers from a number of Kroger stores, including Christine Haltham from a Kroger store in Indiana. She's a meat manager. She herself wears a mask 8 to 10 hours a day, is encountering thousands of people a day, many of them not wearing masks. And she said she used to ask people to put on a mask, but it's become so contentious that she said now it used to be wearing a mask used to be a safety issue. It's now become a political issue. Asking someone to put on a mask is like asking them to throw away their gun.
Yeah, it's amazing, and I know, John, you have an idea about how retailers should be dealing with security rather than having Christine say to
Yeah.
a customer, wear a mask. What's your thought?
Yeah, I mean, well, you could see this coming when the president said that masks are optional. I'm not gonna wear one, and it's kind of carried through. But no, this morning on Twitter, you may have seen a viral video going out there where there's a heroic Costco employee taking away a cart from a guy in the store who's not wearing a mask. And there's a couple of ironic things there. One, the video is not shot by a bystander. It's actually shot by the quote unquote victim, maskless guy who feels like he's going to come off as the hero. And one of the great comments, and there are many, of course, right? Show up just for the comments, is that grocery stores and places like Costco could redeploy nightclub bouncers who've been out of work and put them to work in the stores here and enforce these mask policies, which customers that are, like Jen said, are just not following.
Right. And the bouncers could also be used to do crowd control, make sure that only a certain number, it's just transferring their regular job to a But yeah, the whole mask issue, I had read an article about a Kroger employee too, Jen, who really wished that the company would make masks mandatory for customers. I think they're not, simply because of this whole pushback that a lot of citizens have against, wearing a mask. I'm not really sure
I'd be sure. I think Kroger
it's
has
coming
said
from.
that. Yeah, I think Kroger has said that it's mandatory for their stores, but it was a little bit slow in coming in that they had issues just obtaining as many for their employees. But
It's a mandatory for employees.
Right.
for
The
customers.
employee wants
shoppers,
wants it to be mandatory
Right.
for shoppers.
Gotcha. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
So Jen, on UFCW, you mentioned that they're going to out those retailers that are not, in their opinion, doing a good job. Did they name any of them on the call?
Well, I mean, it's clear who they're not pleased with. They're more pleased with Albertsons, Safeway, and not pleased with Kroger, who, they really want to set the new standard. And with the $2 raise, which Kroger ended on the 17th, and mandatory masks, so I think, and Walmart, they mentioned, Aldi, they're reaching out to these folks and asking them to step up.
How effective do you think that they're going to be in these efforts? And do they have, consumers behind them? Because when I look at this IFIC survey, only a third of consumers want the employees to wear masks. That number was shocking to me. When I read this, I really expected the numbers that I just read off to be much higher, that people wanted, the grocery stores to be safer. And it doesn't look like that.
Right. Well, I think it's, the call this morning, there was a lot of emotion too from some of the grocery store workers. They really do feel like they're risking their lives to go to work. And so, the mask thing should be motivated by protecting the people working at the store, not making the customers all feel,
Right.
comfortable and like they have the right to not do that.
And this is kind of off a little bit, but there's just, social media is going crazy with all of this. And I just happened to read a meme or something last night about masks should be viewed as an act of kindness. You are trying to keep, if you happen to have it, you're not trying to not pass it on to somebody else, instead of, a infringement on your personal rights, which, kind of maybe frames it a little bit differently, if we can all just be kinder through all of this, but whether or not that is something that will actually take off, who knows?
I'd like to go back to what John talked about with that Costco video. Because of the number of views that these people are getting, do we think that this is going to be a new trend, that people are going to go into grocery stores without a mask and confront the store employees with their iPhones so that they can post something on Facebook or Twitter or YouTube and become quote unquote famous?
Well, I mean, that appears to be what this guy was doing, or maybe he was upset that he was losing his basket of groceries, which was a pretty full cart, by the way, that was being pulled away. Look, I mean, everything is a political issue now, and it's going to be, I think, for the next several months. So whatever, and grocery stores are places that anybody can walk into, and so we'll probably see a few more of these before we're through.
Hopefully not. For some good news, Kat, in Chicago, Bob Mariano is back. What do you think?
Yes. As a Chicagoan who has to do her grocery shopping here, I'm excited. I unfortunately don't live that close to Lincoln Park. I don't live that far away, but yeah, he's introducing a new concept that I think sounds a little bit like what we've kind of noodled around here about what the future of grocery is going to be, where if, food service is allowed to come back in grocery stores, we'll see how this all plays out. But he's planning to do open kitchens where people come in, they have the option to dine in or take out. So it's really going to be a very experiential concept with a lot of the traditional grocery items being available for delivery. They won't be available for purchase necessarily in the store, but the store will offer them for delivery. So it's kind of a nice hybrid of come in, watch us make the magic, eat in, take it home, and then your staples will just ship to you at your convenience.
And it's a smaller footprint store.
Yes. I don't remember exactly if they said how big it was, but they did say it was a small footprint.
Yeah, so what's interesting to me is, so Bob is back. Don Fitzgerald, who has been a long time Bob partner, if you would, going back to the Dominic's days and at Roundy's, they've put together this this group that I was talking to Don yesterday. That come 2021, they're going to start opening stores, and there'll be more than one of them.
Yeah, and they're targeting urban neighborhoods in the city. There's right now just staying in Chicago and targeting those urban neighborhoods, which I think makes a lot of sense for them, because that's, I think, the at the beginning, the key clientele for this type of thing, people who are, on their way home from work and just grabbing something. So it'll be interesting. I'm excited. I can't wait till, I think they said March 2021 is when it's going to open. So I'll have to take a John over to Lincoln Park.
How is Mariano's doing? There was so much talk, as an East Coast guy, this is the Midwest Wegmans. But has that really been the case? And I know we've read some things about, Kroger's having a little bit of issues trying to kind of Krogerizing it and making it a positive contributor.
Well, I think it was most definitely, and I think it changed significantly the entire Chicago shopping. But since Kroger took it over, and I've since that point probably been in Mariano's, and Kat, I'd love your opinion, probably 20, 25 times, a lot of out of stocks, a lot of Kroger private label, a lot of the foods that they were known for, like their clam bar, like their barbecue, basically changed everything. And it just became a nicer looking Kroger without all the heart and soul that Bob and Nina put into it.
Yeah, and it also depends on, it really, like any banner, it depends on which store you go to. The one I personally shop was a former Dominic's, like many of them were. It was one of the first stores to open. I think it was one of the first 10 maybe that opened. So, and it hasn't been touched since then. So it's one of those, I guess, older concepts now. So I have gone out to some in the suburbs, and they opened a new one closer to downtown than where I live. And those stores are still very nice. And you walk in and you're like, wow, this is great. But a lot of the Chicago personality has been kind of stripped from that. And that was one of the big things that happened to Dominic's too, when Safeway took it over, is that a lot of the reasons us locals, went there is we could find the things that you couldn't find in a Walmart or whatever. So a lot of that just regional personality seems to be missing.
Talking about personality,
this idea that a lot of stores, it's sort of easy, or not, I'm going to say easy, but you can create a nice concept, but then running out dozens of them is really difficult to kind of keep them special.
Yeah, and also, Kat, I'd be curious, again, because you're in Chicago, how much of Bob's personality is going to bring in people to this format? Is it the format that's going to be attractive to the people in Chicago, or that Bob is back and he's trying something yet again?
Well, I think that it may slightly depend on what type of marketing they do. Like if Bob comes out and he's the face of, Dom.
Oh yes, of course he will.
Then
he will.
Then yeah, and and kind of play off that thing like, hey, I brought you Mariano's. You loved Mariano's, back in the day, and here we go again. So I think that will.
And remember, he brought Dominic's to new heights as well. And Dominic's was one of the first retailers to really be very strong in food service. So this is his third time.
Yeah. He just can't leave Chicago for some reason.
It almost sounds like it almost sounds like an Eataly kind of concept. Do you ever go into that Eataly that's in downtown Chicago, Kat?
I do occasionally. It's a little bit difficult because it is downtown, so I never want to go when I'm gonna have a lot of stuff to carry or whatever. But
right.
If I'm down there and looking for something to eat, it is a very frequent stop, and it does kind of sound similar to that type of smaller scale.
So talking about new formats, John, you have a column that posted, I think it was yesterday, channel changing and the new abnormal. Talk to us a little bit about those channel changes and what you see happening.
Yeah, thanks. We talked about this idea of how this great bounty of sales coming to retailers isn't necessarily distributed equally. And, the differences being, in a lot of cases, the omni-channel abilities and the ability to keep stores safe matter, and the size of the store and those kinds of things. So, for discount stores like Aldi and Lidl and Trader Joe's, they've been growing, exponentially and really garnering a lot of the industry growth until this crisis came along. They're suddenly being look a little vulnerable because their stores are smaller. They don't have as robust e-commerce, and so the question is, what do you do then? And we talked a little bit about this in our last session. But Aldi's saying, hey, guess what? Our prices are good, and these retailers are also trying to get way out in front of this idea that their stores are clean, their stores are safe, because they tend to rely on more frequent trips. And again, they have a little bit less to fall back on to this, e-commerce thing that Walmart and Kroger are doing. So there's a little bit of that going on, in Europe. Aldi's done an interesting thing where they partnered with a German technology company that's automatically counting traffic in the stores and then letting customers into a store with a red or a green light, right? So it fits the Aldi model of low labor deployment on this thing, and also handles it. So there's that. There's the expectation that these guys are going to have to get a little bit more heavily involved in e-commerce in order to sort of play in this new era. And then again, the coming economic bad times, on the other hand, are useful for them too.
So, John, you point out that Aldi, really low overhead, 3 or 4 people working in the store, and they've been growing exponentially, as you mentioned. Now that they're going to have more people in the store, whether it's to keep the store stocked, to wash down things more often, and so on. What happens to the Aldi price model?
Yeah, well, I mean, what they're saying is, we're going to continue to find ways to do things efficiently, and I wouldn't put it past them. I mean, it's pretty amazing, what they've been able to do, volume-wise versus supermarket with such a lower labor model. But yeah, there's some, I think there is some concern that, some of these, these mitigation efforts we've taken, and the social distancing, the store capacity limits, are compromising these guys a little bit more than maybe a larger store.
So talk to us about Target and Walmart earnings. You've been on the calls.
Yep.
What do they have to say?
Both had very similar comps. I think Walmart was 10%. Kroger, Target was 10.8. I think. Don't quote me on that. I'm still writing the story. But and both of them would describe these patterns of shopping, which were very interesting. They saw a run up in late February, and for them, it's good because when you go to Target to stock up on toilet paper, you're like, well, let's get some furniture and some, workout gear and that other stuff. So they did pretty well in late February. March comes along, they've got the same problems everybody else with stock issues. Target a little bit less food equity, than Walmart. So maybe Walmart did a little bit better in the early stages there. But then as the quarter progressed, they were getting people buying puzzles and games and toys and office supplies because people are working and playing at home. And then Target says at the end of April, they got this enormous surge of people coming back to the stores, buying apparel, buying televisions. That's spending some federal stimulus money. All the while they're the headline on most of the Target stories is going to be their ridiculous e-commerce numbers, and so that's going on. They're getting 200-300% increase in people driving up to the store, but they're also getting traffic in the store. So it really kind of saved it for them. The difference then finally between Walmart and Target is because Target's fulfilling things out of their store, I think they were a little bit better prepared to kind of take more people, but it costs them a lot more to do that. So financially, Walmart came out of the thing a little bit better than Target did. And they're both, things are up in the air as far as the future goes.
To build on something that you said, with more people working at home and buying, office supplies at Walmart and Target, the report came out that it's expected in San Francisco and the Bay Area, only about 20% of people are going to go back to offices. What's going to happen with all this extra office space? And is that an opportunity for grocery?
You got me on what's going to happen with office space. But yeah, it's people are going to be at home, so they're going to be more food delivery, you'd have to guess, right? If you're working, you're not necessarily going to be able to go to your kitchen and prepare something every day. So that's definitely an opportunity for food delivery.
Jen, what do you and Kat think?
Well, I think, the biggest impact of the empty offices, because I've been hearing about that in other major cities as well, is, all the peripheral businesses that are supporting that, including grocery stores that are sort of designed to have, a lot of grab and go stuff, like maybe an Amazon Go that's like you pick up this before you get, on the train or whatever and get out of there. And now if they're not getting the lunch business or the take home dinner stuff, it's really going to change. With all this urban renewal, I wonder if we're going to start to see it roll back as people are staying home and not showing up to office buildings.
Yeah. It might have an effect on grocery closer to that are located in more neighborhoods instead of more business areas where, maybe if people are working from home, they'll be able to run out on their lunch hour on a Wednesday and do grocery shopping instead of having to do it on Saturday morning. So maybe, traffic will be more evenly spaced. I don't know. And then like to John's point, grocery delivery, if they're going to be home to accept it, they might be able, that might continue to continue as an uptick.
I've also heard from a bunch of farmers that they're now looking at downtown real estate to put in some indoor farms to not have to ship lettuce. 95% of all lettuce is grown in California. And it's absurd when you think that John in New York is buying a bag of lettuce for $2.29 that had to come all the way from California with the carbon footprint and everything else. So, it might be a new use for those office buildings to be, downtown farms that are controlled, that the lights are on 24/7 so that the crops are growing faster. We don't have any E. coli problems. We can eliminate some trucking problems and so on. Jen, last word, give us some good news.
Well, speaking of indoor farming, which is exploding, Denver just got Gotham Greens, which is from John's hometown of New York City. And they took over a huge space in a residential area that also has, restaurants and markets and things. So I'm excited to check that out.
Yeah, indoor farming is definitely, one of the solutions to the whole climate change and agriculture problem. So thanks, guys. And thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to add your comments to our Facebook Live. All our archived programs, if you missed any, are on Winsight Grocery Business Facebook and website, and on Supermarket Guru Facebook and website as well. And be safe. Have a great weekend. And we'll see you back here Tuesday, 9:30 a.m. Pacific time, 12:30 p.m. Eastern time. And until then, have a great weekend.